Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing a video. By the way, I'm going to be starting to do videos more on my computer in the next couple of days or weeks, depending. Sometimes I just like to throw the phone into the what is it called? The thing. I forgot the term. I don't know all these new terms for technology. I still send dick pics in the mail, for fuck's sake. I'm just kidding. Anyways, I just wanted to talk about a very important subject that's been brought to my attention the last several weeks or days, because it's a very world-shaking event, well, not event, but thing that has happened, and that actually super important. No, it's not actually, but so I wanted to talk about some of the statements from I'm going to say that, first of all, this is about a very controversial musical group that has been at the forefront of the metal genre for many years, and a lot of people have a very divided opinion about them. However, the last couple of weeks I kind of started to run into a lot of YouTube clips and stuff of their I'll go into that in a second, but I've been starting to listen to this band a lot, and I realized that there's a very underappreciated wealth of musical talent to be explored within the margins of their very early career, and that band is Pantera. Oh, the suspense. Now, the thing that bothers me about Pantera is that from day one, when they were signed to a major label, Atco Records, they were denying. I don't remember all the interviews and all the stuff that they said back in the day, but they denied that they had this glam period, kind of half, like, tried to bury it and hide it. And I'm just like, why? Like, at this point, I've been listening to I Am the Night and Projects in the Jungle, to be specific. And I'm like, Metal Magic is kind of mixed. It's kind of miffy, the song Metal Magic's awesome, speed metal. Tell Me If You Want It is a almost self-parody in the lyrics, because I had this friend who's sadly departed who used to make fun of it because I used to play it for him just to laugh at it. Cause, making love in my back of my limousine, and it's fucking hilarious. But jokes aside, hearing hearing Rex Brown come out and like last year and say Pantera did not exist before Phil joined, and discounting those early albums in general. Well, Phil was actually more open to them the last couple of years. I remember even in like 2013, he was like, he would be open to reissuing Power Metal, which is the first one he was on, which is kind of just power metal. It's not really like glam. I guess Pussy Tight Tonight is kind of a glam. PST 88 is kind of a glam lyrical song, but the rest of it's pretty just like Judas Priest, like, or Riot, what Riot was doing at the time. Not Quiet Riot, the New York band Riot. Sort of like that, sort of a mixture of that, and a little bit of thrash metal, Testament, Megadeth kind of influence seeping in there. So power metal is a great underappreciated masterpiece as it is. It has a cult following now. So, and then you have the early albums. You have the Metal Magic. You have, which like I said, it's mixed. It sounds like a little bit like early Def Leppard, which is always a plus. Little AOR-ish tendencies towards the middle of it, and then a little bit on the next album too. Even though one of their songs, I can't remember which one it was, off Projects in the Jungle, is prime AOR. Like, it's really good stuff. So I just don't understand this attitude that, like, while the Darryls were alive, or Vinnie Paul and Dimebag Darrell, I should say, not the Darryls, but the Abbotts were, the Abbott brothers were alive. Why they tried to do this with all that stuff? And I'm going to say some controversial things. I have a feeling it was more Vinnie Paul's like perception of that stuff than Dimebag, because I recall an interview that Dimebag did with Guitar World in the mid-90s. He said one of his favorite solos was from We'll Meet Again, which is off of Power Metal. They tried to bury Power Metal, they tried to bury Metal Magic, I Am the Night, and Projects in the Jungle. They tried to bury all those albums. They tried to say, oh, we didn't really start. Oh, their first album is Cowboys from Hell. It was a fucking crock of shit. Oh, they're good. And then Vinnie Paul's like, oh, they're good collector's items, but we don't really, that doesn't really represent us, and all this stuff, and all these like denials and stuff. And I think Phil just went along with all that because like this is my perception. I don't know what happened, but I do like Cowboys from Hell, and I do like Vulgar Display of Power to some extent. I know that's a controversial one. After that, it's spotty for me. I know a lot of people have this like cult follow. The Great Southern Trendkill has kind of a cult appreciation nowadays. I listen to it, I'm just like, I'd even rather listen to Steve Tucker, Morbid Angel, than this, who actually opened for Pantera at one point too, ironically enough. It's just like, yeah, I think it's underrated, Tucker, or Morbid Angel, as a side note. So I'm just like dumbfounded and just kind of disturbed by just how harsh Rex Brown came out in this interview last year about the early material. It's like, and he's accusing Terry Glaze / Lee of saying all this. Oh, he's always had no career. He's trying to spout his mouth off now. Like, there's definitely some kind of tension between him and Terry Glaze / Lee, because they went by both names. The original singer of Pantera, maybe not original, but original recorded singer of Pantera, I should say, or released singer. And I don't see I heard that they jammed once on some early Pantera like years back. I don't know what happened between the two later, but this whole notion that a band has to deny their early stuff to such a violent extent that this interview I'm talking about, just, it makes me it's kind of sad. It's almost like Tom Warrior if he did Cold Lake for the first 4 albums. Like, that's how violent like they get against it sometimes. And Cold Lake, to be fair, is not the greatest album, but see, I can see a band, our first album didn't really represent us, like the band Genesis. Their first album sounded nothing like, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway or Nursery Crime, even though there was little hints of things to come. But we're a band like First Fate's Warning. I always thought it was kind of lukewarm. I think like they didn't really start until Spectre Within. This is just my opinion. I don't like the First Fate's Warning too much. People don't like the first Rush ones. But when you have 4 albums and 10 years of life as a band before you start denying the previous 10 years and previous albums, there's something to be said about that. And I know Pantera weren't signed. They did it all because their dad had a studio. All this stuff happened. The Abbott brothers' dad. I just see it as really sad that these guys are getting up there in age, the survivors of Pantera, and they don't just say, well, hey, people want to hear this, we can remaster this or remix it. I mean, there are some real gems on those early albums. I'm surprised. Like, I used to listen to power metal a lot, but but I never listened to like I Am the Night, and I had Metal Magic on this like Reborn Classics CDR with some other album or something, and I listened to it. I liked some of the songs, but I laughed at it too. I laugh at that one more than any of the other ones. So I think everything afterward is pretty stellar for what it is. I would almost consider it more like U.S. power metal with some glam influences rather than just glam metal. That's pretty much what it is. Great guitar playing. I didn't used to like Dime that much, like in a certain way, because I was the tough material. Like, the 90s fucking sucked for metal. It put a lot of bad trends in there. Phil Anselmo, like it or not, kind of put some of those trends into metal. This meathead, fucking macho, like overly aggressive testosterone kind of thing, like Henry Rollins, but like with less brain cells. And I'm not saying that Phil Anselmo himself is like that. I'm just saying he kind of started that trend. Just don't get me wrong, he helped start that trend. Just like grunge bands started new, or we aren't responsible for post-grunge. Pantera started some bad trends. So, I don't like this whole attitude those guys have. And to be fair, Phil has kind of seen the light about power, at least power metal. I think he has. He's talking about singing like he wants to sing like Halford again lately. It's just like, yeah, I think he's seen the light about that album because people, enough of a following now. I've seen like 3 or 4 interviews where he mentions that like he does have a fondness for it now. Now, why they didn't do it while they were still alive? Well, it was the 90s. And that's what bothers me about it. It's like this 90s anti-80s metal thing. It's like, for all that stuff they went through as a band for those first 4 albums, for those first 10 years or so. I think they formed in 81 or 82. If that, I think it might have been even before that when they were really young, For all, I'd have to look it up. I think it was 81 or 82, but 83 is their first album. So 83 through 90, they were doing this kind of stuff, whatever, and they progressed as a band. But for them to deny this stuff at this age and this in such an immature way that Rex Brown did in that interview, I see it's really disingenuous and just lame. It's like, okay, well I'm gonna be buying more bootleg Pantera stuff and more maybe even a bootleg I Am the Night shirt. I thought about it today. I'm like, I want to stand up for this music. It's forgotten by a lot of people, and it's good, and it had a following back in the day. In these regional things. I mean, they had enough of a following to have Metallica hang out with them before they were even signed, and Slayer and stuff, and they like hung out and did all, they jammed and stuff with the guys from Metallica. I mean, that's pretty much a sign that they they were on the verge of something, of course, even back then. But I think Rex Brown is bitter that he put all that work into those first 4 albums, and it took Phil to like get the attention of the mainstream or whatever, the big record labels. But I just think it's really stupid and dumb and just ignoring things. And I'm gonna conclude it like this. So all these a lot of bands I mentioned even now, like Fates Warning, Jim Matthews used to like be embarrassed about the first few albums and stuff up until the early 2000s, where things were kind of starting to go a little better. I mean, he wasn't embarrassed, but he's like, oh, it's like looking at your old high school yearbook or something. But now, then he reunited with John Arch, and he did that Arch Matthews, the EP in like 2003 or 4 or something like that. And then he did the full-length albums with him. And then they did Wake of the Guardian live. You have fucking Joe Elliott, who was kind of pushed out of the metal, admitting their early stuff was metal, and like dissing the early stuff or dissing the first album or whatever. And then years later, he has this early years box set. He writes the whole liner notes for that, And you have all these people just saying, hey, maybe it wasn't so bad back then. Maybe, in comparison, like this, nostalgia, with this nostalgia of the 80s and all this stuff, it's like, there were some cool things about it. Yeah, it got oversaturated. It got really, intensely annoying because you just hit over the head with it all the time. But it's like some people from back then are starting to just like say, hey, I like my early shit. Why not pull out a song or two, from that first album that, was cheesy as fuck. It's like, who cares? It's fun. It's rock and roll. It's just fucking music. And you have like Rex Brown just like, it's so terrible. It's like, fuck off, man. I'd rather Phil Anselmo nowadays seems like a cooler person to hang out with, of course, than he used to be with all the drugs and alcohol and stuff. And just like the attitude. Just like, and the thing is I did hear that back in the day he wouldn't sign power metal. This is just hearsay and rumors. Like he would want to like beat you up if you tried to bring power metal to him. But I've heard a lot of rumors about musicians that don't turn out to be true. But it's bullshit. Early Pantera is fucking great. I would dare say I like it more than groove era Pantera. That's just the way my musical tastes operate. Come On Eyes is a great song, great riffs. Hot and Heavy had the ice cream cone line is almost as bad as like Gene Simmons' line in this one Kiss song about I want to put my fire in your fireplace, or come and look at my ice cream cone, take a lick. It's like, it's one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. But the song kicks ass. It's heavy. So that's about all.